Hey YouTube, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a transformation I'm going through in my life right now. And this video is kind of aimed towards people that consider themselves atheists, which I consider myself for quite a long time. Yeah. So I grew up with one parent who was, I guess you'd call him a Christian, maybe a Christian in name, who was very abusive to me and my sister. And also his family was very Christian, but it was also very lovey-dovey. And then my household was harsh and unforgiving. So, given that I had such an issue with my dad, the whole idea of a cosmic patriarchy sort of figure was a real problem for me. And he would sort of push religion on me, but then never live it. And I just, despite the fact that I had these grandparents on his side and a family on his side that was very lovey-dovey Christian, I also had this other side that was super hostile, and it just seemed disconcerting. Like, it seemed like those Christian people were fake and were putting on some kind of act. And I just thought that the religion was a load of shit, to be honest. And I also read the Christian Bible and decided that I didn't like the God as he was portrayed. So that became something that I had a deep trouble with. And I really never accepted religion or any form of spirituality. And being sort of a logical person that taught himself how to program and repair computers and do art and do electronic music and program synthesizers and all sorts of geeky things, I sort of heavily relied on my reason and logic functions for navigating through life. And so Christianity was like the last thing on my mind, and so was any other religion. So I was an atheist for a very long time, struggled with a lot of depression and trauma and things like that, but never really sought anything spiritual or religious. And so when I started using drugs and I got busted plenty, I was offered either 90 days in jail or a rehab program where I would be forced to do 12-step meetings. And I went to these 12-step meetings, and the first one that I went to was in a church, and I was like, oh, I see what the fuck's going on here. and yeah, they would use the G word, the God word, and they would talk about prayer and stuff, and I was like, this is not going to work for me. Like, this is not my scene. So I promptly went out and, using my brain, I figured out a bunch of sort of exotic research chemicals and things that wouldn't show up on drug tests, and continue using drugs to escape the pain that I grew up with. And eventually I got caught because I smoked some cannabis and was at the wrong time of the drug testing regimen. So so I got caught, and then I got sent to the advanced kids class where they're really fucking hard on you, and everyone had tattoos, and all the men were construction workers, and everyone was sort of like definitely like a felon type, and I was more of a misdemeanor type, so it was really a cultural disconnect or lifestyle disconnect between me and them. But I was in that class, and they would get in your face and challenge you, and there was like a card that you had to sign to prove that you went to 12-step meetings. So I kind of got forced to go into those, and luckily enough for me, I was able to find an atheist sponsor. So thank God. Yeah. Funny, right? Thank the cosmos and universe and evolution for that. Because he was able to sort of allow me to fudge my way through the religious aspect, or they would say spiritual aspect, of having a higher power in that program. And he told me that, one of his sponsees had used the rock that is in the middle of the coastline where we live as a spiritual deity, and the guy would pray to it, and he substituted that as his God, and then he sort of became maybe like a naturalist kind of spiritual person. It was really interesting. But when I heard that story, I was like, okay, so you can fudge this a little bit. Well, I had read a couple books about Zen Buddhism, and that belief system really appealed to me because it was not really all that spiritual. It was more rational, and it was about introspection. Me being a giant introvert, it really spoke to me. So what I did is I started meditating, and I would sort of load my mind with some thoughts of difficult things I was experiencing in my first couple of years of recovery before I would go meditate, and I would think about those things. And the funniest thing is there's sort of like this voice inside of me that would bubble up as I was going through all these thoughts, and it felt like it was like my own parent that I never had. And I would often work out whatever crazy shit was going on in my mind, because when you're brand new to recovery, not only do you have to deal with the withdrawal of some drugs, but you also have to deal with what you're running from. So there was just a lot to handle, a lot of neuroticism to go through, and I needed that meditation practice. So when I would do my 12-step paperwork, when they said, "Did you pray about this, or did you seek your higher power?" I'd say yes, I did. I meditated, and so I managed to get through the 12 steps doing that. But after I started feeling better and a little bit more at peace with myself after about 3 years, I stopped meditating, and I was fine, but maybe not as conscious about what was going on in my life as I could be. And I was also taking antidepressants, so that sort of probably gave me a false sense of security in my life and whatever it was I was doing and whatever problems I had. So I just kind of went along with that, and got progressively better relationships in my life, and ended up with my ex-wife for about 10 years, and I was very happy with myself for quite a number of those years, and I never really thought about getting into any kind of spiritual practice. But right around the time that I realized that we're not going to last very long, I started thinking that I needed to get back to spiritual practice, because I had not exactly let go of her just yet. But I knew about 5 months in advance that the sort of emotional disconnect was happening based on some things that she was doing, some behaviors that she was engaged in. So I was thinking about that, but it was not until I finally said the words that I don't think we should be together, and she sort of agreed, and then the emotions started processing, that I went, I need to fucking go and do this. Like, I need to pick up this tool that I had that got me through literally the worst point in my life. And so I started going to this zendo here in Salt Lake City, and lo and behold, the approach that the zendo takes is very similar to my Zen teacher, Charlotte Jokobek. In fact, the person that runs the meditation is a female, and looks and sounds like Charlotte Jokobek. So I was like, well, this is interesting. She relates a lot of things about Zen Buddhism in the lens of mental health and difficulties in relationships and things like that, and that really appealed to me. So I started going, and on the Sunday service, what they do is they talk a little bit about some life issues and how you can use things like meditation to sort of get through them, I guess, or at least be aware of them, and how you're reacting, and maybe cool your shit a little bit. And then they would do sort of a question and answer session, and the teacher would sort of had a way of getting people to be vulnerable and expose some of their insecurities and nagging fears and issues that they normally wouldn't tell anyone else. And so in during that Sunday practice, it was sort of like a vulnerability fight club, or maybe like a contest of who could say like the most personal and scary and deep thing. And it reminded me of almost like group therapy. But then after that, what they would do is meditate for 20 or 30 minutes. And the real interesting thing is, once everyone had sort of aired what was going on in their lives, and you sort of sit and you have like these thoughts loaded into your mind, and you're thinking about how other people are feeling after they say something deeply personal and probably scary to admit in public in a room full of strangers. There's like this tension, and then when you sit with that tension and then you release it, it's just like, it's magical. It's like almost like going through a traumatic event with a bunch of random people. And for me, the experience was like, wow, everyone's human. Like, everyone has all sorts of issues, and sometimes somebody will say something that I don't have the guts to say about myself. And it's like a wonderful place of accepting our own sort of neuroticism as human beings. And so in going to that place regularly, I sort of began to accept myself for the issues that I have. And I realized, like, I might actually not be an atheist, or at least, I mean, technically I'm an atheist because I don't believe in a God per se, but I might not, maybe I'm a spiritual person, because when I can get in this room every Sunday and feel this energy of these people that just want to release all their inner crazy and let it go and grow as human beings. I'm just like, where was this shit all my life? Why didn't I not come here? Because in my failed marriage, it would have really benefited me to sit down and be conscious of what I'm doing and what I'm thinking and feeling, and hopefully I would have a partner that would be interested in doing that too, because a lot of issues in relationships just boils down to not letting things go and not communicating. And when you can kind of get your brain slowed down a little bit and see things for what they are, maybe you can get a little bit closer to that. So I realize that meditation practice is something I should do even when I'm not in desperate trouble, because I've for sure done things in my past relationships where I wasn't really conscious of what I was doing, and I couldn't exactly figure out what was wrong about it. And if I would have maybe just thought about it a little bit further or something, then it maybe wouldn't have been a problem. So I've been going through a real interesting change in my life where this sort of self-protective introvert type person is getting a little bit more open with other people and a little more compassionate and understanding that I'm not alone in having problems. It's just that in society we're supposed to sort of put out this image that everything's cool and okay and everyone's happy, but beneath every single person is a series of things that nag them. And so if you can sort of understand that about even somebody that offends you or is against you, that it might be that they have something going on in there and they're lashing out to try to make themselves feel better, or they don't want to face it. And you can sort of gain an understanding and compassion of your average human being that you encounter. I know that after I've gone to this meditation place and I get out in public, my interactions with people are so much better. I'm able to sort of sense what's going on with them a little bit and be a little more receptive, and that's really weird coming from somebody who's an introvert and a loner. So I think that meditation practice is probably really important for me, and maybe it would be really important for your average person as well. The cool thing is somebody who doesn't believe in God can still do it and have that benefit. So I've been talking to a couple of my friends that I met in the atheist group when I first moved here to Utah, thinking like, oh gosh, I got better huddle together with the people that aren't Mormon. I've been talking to them, and they've been saying that some of their atheist superheroes have been talking about things like meditation and whatnot, and I'm like, that's really cool. That's really cool, because once you drop religion or you don't believe in it, it's like, well, what about all that stuff that religion does for people that keeps their minds working and keeps their emotions in check and gives them faith and allows them to get through hard times without completely falling apart and doing terrible things. When you're atheist, you don't have that. You don't have that support network, really. So something's really missing. And so I think it's really neat that meditation is becoming more of a accepted thing here in the West, and it doesn't have to have Buddhism attached to it, or even Zen Buddhism, or any sort of Eastern philosophy. It can just be a thing you do secularly to keep your mind sort of in tune. So I can kind of identify a little bit more with people that are spiritual or religious, because I've realized that when I listen to the inner voice that I listen to when I'm meditating, they might be doing the exact same thing when they say that they're talking to God, and we just have a different concept of what that is, and that thing is always inside of you, and if you don't meditate, it might come out anyway. You might have a flash of insight from your sort of inner child, or whatever you want to call it. So I feel that I can't really hate on Christians and Muslims and stuff anymore, because they have something that's very valuable that that a person like an atheist doesn't have. And even though we might disagree about specifics about the universe and the nature of man and all sorts of things, then it's still kind of cool that you could be around somebody who's benefiting the practice. And that's made me sort of be at peace a little bit more with religion, and especially with my dad's side of the family, who was very lovey-dovey and Christian. And now that I'm in my late 30s, it's kind of sad, but I can now appreciate what it is that they've done and chosen to do with their life, because I look at their lives, and they've been praying and going to church for I don't know, probably since they were born, and they live generally positive lives and their relationships are healthy. And whereas I never had any of that practice in mind, I've been mostly a train wreck until maybe the last 12 years or so. So there is value in this stuff, and if you're atheist, at least consider some kind of, sort of soft core practice like yoga or meditation, because it could really change your life and your view, and provide a lot of benefit from you without having sort of the spookery. So I'm going to be a regular attender of the zendo, and will be meditating on my own, because I've already noticed that it's starting to change the way that my brain works. I noticed that in difficult situations where there's a lot of stimulus, I thought that I had attention deficit disorder, but I don't think that I do now that I've been meditating, because I've actually been able to meditate in a busy restaurant without all the noise and things going on distracting me, and been able to finally write computer code with music that has lyrics and that's not distracting me. So I feel like I've sort of, in the last month and a half or so, I've gained a little bit control of my executive function, to the point where I can direct my attention a little bit better. Which is really interesting, because there's a lot of research papers that say that meditation is very good for attention deficit disorder. So even if you don't legitimately have it, then it can still benefit you. It can make your focus even sharper and better. So there's a lot to it. I hope I've inspired somebody to think about this, and I hope you enjoy the video. And at some point we'll be talking about bikes again, but at this point I feel like I shouldn't even be making promises. It's been a whole year. Thanks for being with me, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.